How much money is enough? This is a question that I think that majority of people will never ask themselves. But a few months ago, I had an experience that really made me ask myself this question. How much money is enough? So in the last few years, I've been on this pursuit of financial independence, and I've been doing what everyone's been saying to do. I've been saving and investing 60% of my income so that I can reach a point financially to never have to work for money again. But a few months ago, I had a dilemma, and it happened one morning when I opened up my laptop, logged into my bank account, and checked my account balance. And I came to the realization that I had more money than I have ever had. And as I've been watching my account increase throughout the years, I realized that my worries that I used to have about money were no longer there. And the part that troubled me was that although I knew that I was extremely financially comfortable, I still didn't feel like I had enough. And despite being in the best financial position that I have ever been in my life, why was I feeling like I didn't have enough? So I sat down and I thought about this idea of enough and how much money do I need in my life until I have enough? And I think it's important to ask yourself this question because if you don't, you could spend your whole life saving and investing without ever feeling like you have enough. So I started to research the word enough. And the best definition of the word enough is sufficient to meet a need or satisfy a desire. And with that definition, I started to think, well, maybe I don't feel like I have enough because I'm confusing the end goal of financial independence with enough. I've been thinking that the journey to financial independence is a single step journey where you go from not enough to enough. But with that definition, sufficient to meet a need or satisfy a desire, I have met my needs. I'm beyond meeting my needs and I'm starting to satisfy my desires. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the journey to financial independence is like walking up a mountain. And when you set out to walk up a mountain, you have an end goal in mind of a grand, beautiful view. But you start at the bottom in the crowded woods where you can't really see much. Each step towards the summit, the trees start to clear and you begin to see the view. With each step, the journey becomes more beautiful and enjoyable. And it's so gradual that in order to recognize the beauty, you have to recognize the gradual changes. And this is the same idea on the journey to financial independence because whenever you start your journey, you have the end goal in mind that once you reach financial independence, you'll reach enough. But with every step you take, you realize that your money is going to allow you to do more and more things. And then you start to realize that you reach enough long before you reach financial independence. It's just like a hike. You have to just look around to see the beauty. You have to recognize it. And so I realized that I needed to stop and take a look back on how money and the idea of enough have evolved on my journey to financial independence because it's so easy to get caught up on the end goal that you forget how far you've come. So in my experience, this is the journey to financial independence, and this is how enough, the idea of enough and money evolved during that journey. When you first start on your journey to financial independence, the first steps are the most difficult steps to take because you have to evaluate a lot of the decisions that you've made that are preventing you from getting on the path to financial independence. And this means getting out of the paycheck to paycheck life. But even in this phase, you still have enough. But enough takes on a very narrow meaning. And enough basically means meeting your basic life needs. And when you have just enough to survive, it's not a healthy way to live because you're in constant fear of what's going to happen if you lose your job or if your car breaks down. And when enough means meeting your basic life needs, it's kind of like being lost in the woods looking for the trail. You're not going forward and you're not going backwards. You're just not sure of where you're going. And finding the path is the first step to financial independence. And you do that by start building a foundation. A foundation that's going to protect you from whatever life throws at you. And you start off by building an emergency fund. And you start by evaluating a lot of your money decisions that are preventing you from getting to the next phase of enough on the journey to financial independence. And when I took this step a couple years ago, I noticed that money was becoming less of a burden to me. And my definition of enough was becoming more than just meeting my basic life needs. It was taking me on to the next step of enough. The second step on the journey to financial independence is when the foundation that you've been building is starting to protect you. You have enough in savings to recover from any life event, but you're still bound to a very narrow definition of enough, where enough starts to mean meeting your life needs without the fear of catastrophe. You have enough money to breathe a bit more. The journey becomes a bit easier because the trail is much more clear and obvious. And you're no longer just lost in the woods, but you're on the trail and you're moving forward. And the journey just becomes more and more beautiful as you go forward. In this step, you finish your emergency fund so that you can start investing. And then you start to notice that your relationship with money starts to change. Money no longer is this enemy that's holding you back, but it's this friend that's helping you move forward. It's providing you much more security and protection to enjoy life and use money as a tool to help you move forward. And when I completed this step of finishing off my emergency fund and starting to invest a lot more, and specifically in index funds, things really started to change. My fears that I used to have of what's going to happen if I lose my job or if my car breaks down were no longer there, because I knew that I had enough money to recover from these events. And this is a point on the journey to financial independence when the trees start to break and you can really start to see the view and the beauty of it all. And the third step on this journey is when the definition starts to become fully complete, because remember, enough is sufficient to meet a need or satisfy a desire. And once you meet your needs by establishing emergency fund and investing, then you can start to focus more on your desires, and the journey becomes much more enjoyable because the trees start to break and the trail becomes much more clear. And when your mind is clear of not having to worry about, can I pay this month's rent, or how am I going to afford gas this week, you can focus on what truly matters because you have enough money to start asking yourself, how can I use this thing as money as a tool to help me maximize my time on this planet? And this is the point of the journey when you just need to stop and take a look back to see how far you've come, because you have enough. You don't have enough to never work again, but you have enough to not be held back anymore by money. Going back to that morning when I woke up, looked at my bank account, and I didn't feel like I have enough, I now know that on the journey to financial independence, you reach enough long before you reach financial independence. You don't need $1 million until you have enough. You just need a sense of security. You need a sense of security that's going to help you keep moving forward on your journey to financial independence, because I think that enough is not a number. Enough is a feeling. It's a feeling of security. It's a feeling that you're not going to be held back anymore by money. Money is just going to keep allowing you to move forward and move forward and move forward. Once you have that feeling, you don't need to wait until you reach financial independence, because you can start to see the beauty. The journey up the mountain of financial independence becomes much more enjoyable because you're living life on your terms. And that is enough.